topic is
10th edition's biggest missed opportunity, and it's this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to
Waypan.
I'm Cal.
I'm Sunny.
I'm going to talk about how using the D10 was 10th's biggest missed opportunity.
I thought you were going to talk about splitting competitive and casual play.
We are going to get to that, but first, we're all about design, right?
Yes, we are.
When we look at a six-sided dice, design-wise, there's only 3 results you can get.
No, there's 6 results because 6-sided dice.
Alright, when we're looking at target numbers, you can either get a 1 in 6, so for example, either a 6 or a 1. You can get either a 33% chance, which is where you have 2 results that you're looking for, either a 1 or a 2, or a 5 or a 6.
Oh, so you're saying that if you get a 1 or a 2, or a 5 or a 6, it's basically the same result?
Well, design-wise it is, so to show whether somebody is good or not, right? When you're taking a look at the Space Marines, they're exactly the same as the Orcs are bad.
What? How does that make any sense?
A Marine misses 33% of the time, and an Orc hits 33% of the time. So, design-wise, they're essentially the same.
Right, and that doesn't quite add up lore-wise either, does it?
Well, no, lore-wise, like, the Space Marines are much more accurate than they're shown on the dice, and Orcs aren't quite as chaotic as they're shown. But the point is that you don't have a lot of breathing room with a D6.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with the D10, you have 5 results then.
Yep, 5 results that we care about when we're looking at it design-wise.
That doesn't seem like a lot though.
It's certainly a lot more than 3.
That's fair enough. So with the D10, the results would be like 90-10, 80-20, 70-30, 60-40, and then 40-50?
That's right, but with a Space Marine hitting on a 3+ with this, it's a big difference compared to that of a 3+ on a 6-sided dice.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because of that, we came up with this...
I want to talk about a special rule.
Okay, alright, fine.
Yeah.
You can explain it then.
So the special rule is called always in with a chance. So long as you roll a 10, you always win the test. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, like a leadership test or whatever. As long as you get a 10, you win.
Or a Termagant wounding a tank?
Always in with a chance.
A Tau fighting a Terminator?
Always in with a chance.
Winning an argument with Sunny?
Always hey!
Most important thing with games is that people believe that they have a chance. It's not whether they statistically have a chance or not, it's whether they believe that they have a chance.
Currently with Warhammer, it has the monopoly problem. So with Monopoly, you can already see who is winning ahead of you, and you just kind of have to sit there and let it happen. And they may not be trying to gloat or anything like that. It's just that they're so far ahead and you're so far behind.
That it feels like gloating.
Exactly. And these games last a really long time, like 2 hours or more, and you're just sitting there waiting for the inevitable to happen.
I wish that Warhammer games only lasted 2 hours.
That is also true.
There's something I would like you to note, guys. We're not saying Warhammer 40,000 here. We're not saying Warhammer Fantasy Battles or Old World. We're not even saying Warhammer Age of Sigmar. We're just saying Warhammer.
But we are talking about 40k in this case, right?
Yes, we are talking about 40k.
Okay.
My point is that Warhammer is designed to have this very slow, grindy nature.
Right, okay.
D10 allows for Ludo-narrative harmony.
Ludo what?
Ludo means game, narrative means story, and harmony means harmony.
Oh, right. So whether or not the gameplay matches the story.
Correct. As I said, a Space Marine hitting on a 3+ on a 6-sided dice feels very different to a Space Marine hitting on a 3+ on a 10-sided dice.
Yeah, I can see that. Alright, Cal, that's enough of numbers, okay? Let's talk about why we even chose the D10 in the first place.
Okay, sure, you go ahead.
When we take a look at it from a product perspective, you can take a look at a D6 and a D20. Everybody pretty much knows what a D6 is. It comes in standard box sets like Monopoly, like we said before. And with D20, some people know what it is, like maybe they've seen it on a t-shirt or a game or a TV show somewhere. But with a D10, it feels completely unique to these 2 dice. And it's also the biggest dice that you can go into that is readable. D20s are a little bit hard to read.
Can you explain what you mean by readable?
Because the numbers are really big.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's easy to use in that sense. And when you think about it from the company perspective, they just want another excuse to sell the game. And a D10 is novel enough that it gives it a little bit of a unique edge.
In other words, it's another way for them to sell this as a luxury product.
Exactly.
As they say, Warhammer is for everyone, unless you're poor.
Especially when you have to pay $40 for specialized dice? Like, anyway, why are we even advocating for ripping people off?
The reason we're doing this is we want the company to change the system, and if we want the company to change how they do things, we've got to give them a reason. And that reason is only one thing for companies. What is it?
More profit. Cal, can we talk about the stats now?
Oh, right, we were going to change the stats.
No, we weren't going to change them. You said we were going to return to what they were.
Oh, right, of course, because we've always had these stats back in the day. They're in Necromunda, and they're part of the history of 40k. So everybody knows the standard stats. Let's go through the stats in full. Movement allowance?
Wait. Everybody has the same movement.
Well, not in this one, because we're aiming for Ludo-narrative harmony.
Oh, like, for example, Space Marines are slower than a Eldar Guardian.
That's right. Weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, wounds, initiative.
Wait. What's an initiative?
Initiative was an old skill, and how it worked was when somebody was fighting another person, the person with the higher initiative would go first.
Ah, right, okay.
Also, it allows them to take initiative tests where they can avoid certain things because they're so fast.
Ah, right, okay, that makes sense.
Attacks, leadership, intelligence.
Wait, what's intelligence?
Intelligence is a person's ability to operate with technical machines. It shows their technical intelligence.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Okay, another old one.
Yeah, alright. So what this one is about how cool they are under pressure.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember how that worked in Necromunda?
Yeah, I think I remember this.
So it would operate in a very similar way. Essentially, when you might have to take a test, not because you're unable to follow orders, but because there's so much chaos going around, you're like, alright, can I keep my cool? Can I do what I need to do?
Exactly.
Willpower.
Will this relate to psychic stuff?
Damn Skippy, it will.
Skippy?
And finally, we've got the one that we made.
Flexibility.
That's right.
Yes, so flexibility means that how easily you can adapt to situations.
Why didn't we just call it adaptability?
Because there's already an A with attacks.
Oh, right. That would be adaptable.
Don't you mean flexible? Taking a look at the current stats, you can see how a Space Marine would be good at all of these things.
The reason we wanted to expand the stats is so that you've got more design space.
Basically, we wanted to give a stat that a Space Marine wouldn't be good at.
Initiative, cool, and leadership give alternative tests instead of just everybody always passing a leadership test to see whether they're rattled by things going on around them. You can take initiative tests for going through difficult terrain. You can take cool tests for people shooting at you. You can take leadership tests for when you're in melee. It gives a greater variety.
With flexibility, intelligence, and willpower, it gives you more options for models like adepts, mechanics, thieves, what have you. And this will create more depth in the game. And it can even give an opportunity for the company to introduce new players of a different kind.
Currently, as things stand, what happens is you go to an objective, you sit on it, and you score points because of that. But why are you scoring points? What makes this thing special?
This gives you a variety of scenarios, like for example having scouts trying to infiltrate a building to disable a system, or a psyker and their adepts bringing down a barrier, or you could even have a tech priest trying to soothe the machine spirit or something like that even.
Currently with the game, there isn't a lot of counterplay, and there certainly isn't a lot of finesse in the play. It's about how quickly can you absolutely decimate your enemy so that you can secure the objectives and be victorious.
This makes playing the game not fun at all, especially if you're not a competitive player.
And with this very restrictive structure, it makes it so that only one type of army wins. The most dominant one. Imagine the same type of army performing in this environment where you have the adepts, where you have the thieves, where you have the mechanics. Their only response would be to attempt to blow those specialized units out of the water, and they wouldn't be able to achieve some of the objectives they want to achieve because they don't have units that are able to perform these tasks.
List building will now require more consideration. Currently, it's all about damage affliction or damage avoidance. You would now need to think about scenarios like, for example, to get to the objective and get the loot, would you need to go through a series of security systems? Do you have a tech priest on hand or some mechanic who can help with that? Perhaps now you've got the loot, but you need to cross difficult terrain. Do you have someone who can travel across that easily? Maybe you need to find out where the objective even is. Do you have someone who can run reconnaissance for you? Someone who is stealthy and nimble? No one person is good at everything, so now you have to consider a variety of people who can fulfill different strengths in the stat line. This makes playing the game more fun because it's not all about obliterating your enemies and getting the objective.
Speaking of, we've been talking about this game in a very competitive mindset. We have talked about how we're going to split the game up.
Right, with competitive and casual play.
Games Workshop themselves splits their customer base into 6 distinct groups. These are collectors, lore readers, converters / diorama makers, painters, competitive players, and finally, casual players.
That's why we're splitting the games into 2. Competitive play will just be default 40k, but for casual players, we can call it Warhammer Legacy.
Now, when it comes to Warhammer 40k, it will change and evolve as per usual, but Warhammer Legacy is focused on remaining the same forever. It's an eternal play mode.
It's all about the feeling that you get with the game. It focuses on Ludo-narrative harmony.
And the other part of it, you may have guessed by its name, Legacy play focuses on you always being able to use your models.
There's an unspoken promise by Games Workshop that you'll always be able to use your models, and this promise has been recently broken.
With the introduction of Primaris models, the removal of models from Age of Sigmar, and other models going the way of Legacy, people feel as if Warhammer is a bad investment. One of our biggest shorts, one of the ones that's on, I believe, 250,000 now, a comment repeats over and over, and that comment is, pick an army that will be available next season.
Here's the honest truth. These models are only worth as much as people are willing to pay for them. And once the majority of the customer base decides that this is too risky to invest in, people are just going to stop buying these models.
You may say we've heard all of that before. We didn't pull this out of nowhere. This comment pops up repeatedly on this very popular short, and that's not a good sign for a business.
This legacy play will future-proof Games Workshop from such disasters.
As you can see, we come from the corporate perspective, but speaking of, we want to bring in new players for them. So we're introducing 3 new modes of play: co-op,
Solo,
and narrative play. Both co-op and solo play function effectively the same. If you want to see how it might work, take a look at Warhammer and their Horde mode.
If you want to know why we should introduce PvE, take a look at all the friendships that Warhammer has broken.
Like Monopoly. Finally, narrative play. This was the original version of play when it came to Rogue Trader. You would have at least one opponent, another opponent, and then a games master. And the games master would make things fun. They would increase difficulty for one side if they're winning too much or things of this nature. And if you think that idea was gotten rid of because it's not that popular, I want to introduce you to this small indie game you may have heard of called Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, and they seem to be doing really well.
Well, not at the moment, but that's a completely different story.
All right, Wizards of the Coast did an oopsie.
Also, this introduces a new type of customer. Ask any DM, do they have a whole bunch of games that no one's ever played but they've bought?
Yeah, like a Warhammer role-playing for beginners box set.
It's not for beginners, and drop it.
Don't be like Cal in the comments.
I didn't do anything wrong. We can open it right after the recording.
Well, there is one more opportunity that we think they've missed, and you'll just have to stay tuned after the outro to hear about that.
Well, I guess that means it's time for us to say, keep those brushes wet. Bye-bye. Well, Sonny, I think we've riled up people enough, so let's rile them up some more.
Yes, so we've got a rule called no more than 2 rolls.
One of the biggest problems with Warhammer is how long it takes to do something. You roll to hit, you roll to wound, you roll to armor save.
Yeah, and there's just way too many steps here, so we'd like to reduce that.
But how do you keep all of those variables in consideration? Don't you want things to be designed better? Yeah, we include them in these 2 rolls.
Let's start with a simple one. In melee, everyone hits on a 6, except for the difference between your weapon skills.
So the difference between your weapon skills, let's say that somebody's got a weapon skill 4 and somebody's got a weapon skill 6, it's a difference of 2. The person with -2 gets -2 to their rolls, so they will hit on a 8 or more, whereas the person with the +2 will hit on a 4 or more. But the other thing is with initiative. Whoever has the higher initiative goes first. It's that simple. Unless they've got some special rule.
With shooting, there'll be a target number because that's how good you are at shooting.
But you don't just automatically hit if you get that number. Instead, we include cover saves with shooting. So cover will -2 that roll.
If you haven't used a move action, you can aim instead.
So you can get various bonuses to whether you hit or not, as well as various minuses.
It's basic maths, it's not complicated.
So wounding is the exact same. You wound on a 6+, but first we've got a test for armor. So let's say that you have an armor of 3, you would increase your toughness all the way up to 9. So only 9 or 10 would actually wound you.
So let's say you have an armor of 3 and I have an armor penetration of 4, so that cancels it out.
But your higher armor penetration won't reduce the wound count. So only the strength can decide whether something goes above or below 6.
So for example, if my weapon strength is 2 greater than your toughness, I would actually be hitting on 4s instead.
That's right. We think that these are pretty simple rules changes, and there's one last thing to just rile up everybody even more. And that one thing is alternative activation, which I really think Warhammer needs. But I think there's this company called One Rule Page or something.
One Page Rules.
Oh, you know, they've been around. I think they might have talked about that before.